Lights, camera, action.
Hey guys.
Hey everyone.
Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you guys for listening last week to our The Princess Diaries episode, one of Emily's favorite movies. This week we're going to be covering one of my favorite movies, and it is actually an animated film. It is The Iron Giant. When was this movie released, Emily? 1999. I thought it was in the 90s. Okay. Yep. 1999 hit. It's absolutely one of my childhood favorites, and I am really excited to be talking about it today. So, you want to lead us off?
I do. The Iron Giant, like we said, was released in 1999. To be more specific, it was on July 31st. It was directed by Brad Bird. It is starring Vin Diesel, Eli Marienthal, Jennifer Aniston, Harry Connick Jr., Christopher McDonald, and John Mahoney. It was distributed by Warner Bros. It has a runtime of 2 hours. It is rated PG. It had a budget of $50 million and a box office total of $31.3 million, so they took a bit of a hit there.
Yes, which is very interesting because although it did, I guess it was a financial flop, it won loads of awards.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yes, it won lots of awards, and obviously, like, time has been kind to this movie, which does happen in different movie series or movies, but this, I mean, it has a huge following as far as, like, people ask Brad Bird on social media all the time, is there ever going to be a sequel? It's just one of those movies that has really aged well as far as just continuing to get a bigger and bigger audience. It's unfortunate, I think, that it didn't do that well financially when it came out because it's a phenomenal movie. It has wonderful reviews as well as having won many awards. And I think there is one specific reason for why it did not do well at the box office.
Why is that?
Well, I touch on this a little bit in the production details, but unfortunately, this was Warner Brothers' second major motion picture that was an animated film. And right before it, they did a movie called, I think it was The Quest of Camelot. We'll cover it in the production details for sure, but they made that movie and it was a massive box office failure, and they did not market this movie. They really didn't throw a lot of money at this movie in general because that movie had done so poorly. So I would have to guess and attribute it to the fact that this did not have really a marketing budget.
Have you seen that movie?
The Quest for Camelot?
Mm-hmm.
No.
I haven't either.
Yeah, no, I definitely have not.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and dive into fun facts. I don't have a ton for this movie, but the ones I do have I think are pretty interesting. So first off, the movie The Iron Giant was based on a book. It was actually called The Iron Man by Ted Hughes, and Ted Hughes actually, unfortunately, passed away 1 year before the movie came out, so he did not get the chance to see it, but he did get to read the script, and he was really impressed with what Brad Bird did. Brad Bird did change a lot, but Ted Hughes really trusted him with it, I think, and he really enjoyed what he had put together. So I thought that was cool.
Yes, I agree. And Ted Hughes's daughter did get to see the film. She went on his behalf when it was released and said that she loved it.
Good.
Yeah.
My next fact is that The Iron Giant was originally supposed to be a Pete Townsend musical. And if you don't know who that is, John, do you want to say who it is?
I don't know.
Oh, you
who
don't
it
know?
is.
He was the lead in the band The Who. Don't you listen to The Who?
Yes, I do. I wasn't connecting the dots there. I wasn't even thinking musically. I was only thinking film wise. I just assumed honestly didn't even connect the two names.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You're right. Yes. The Who. Wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So, originally, like I think this was before the Who. I could be wrong, but Pete like had all the music made for it, I believe. But after, or at least he had agreed to do it. But after Brad Bird had signed on to direct, he scrapped all the musical numbers and completely reworked the script. And Pete did actually remain credited as an executive producer on this movie. And after seeing the movie, he just commented, as far as him being kind of kicked off of it, he just said, well, whatever, I got paid.
Yeah.
So, my next one is, like we mentioned, I think we mentioned this in our last episode, that this movie was Brad Bird's like directorial debut.
Yes.
But I didn't realize this. His very first animation job, though, was working on The Fox and the Hound. So,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So
he wasn't a director at the time. He was an animator, which I know he also worked on The Simpsons quite a bit, which he spoke to the tight schedules of like an animated TV show being what helped him quite a bit on directing this movie.
Yeah.
But that's cool. I did not know that he worked on The Fox and the Hound.
My next fact is that the train workers Kent interviews at the train crash scene are voiced by and modeled after Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston, which were two of Brad Bird's mentors during his early years at Disney. They, I guess, also appear in The Incredibles.
I was going to say, they're the two old guys at the end of The Incredibles who say, they're like, oh, that was old school. And
okay.
Yes, after the robots defeated.
Yeah, so I thought that was a cool little like nod to them.
Yes, it is.
Next is that the Iron Giant said a total of 53 words throughout the entire movie, and that's it.
Wow.
And that's not including like, groans and grunts and stuff though. Like actual words.
Did you know that Vin Diesel voices the Iron Giant in this movie? The role of playing the Iron Giant is what helped him land the role of Groot in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
Because, James Gunn, as well as the casting director, I don't know their titles, she, as well as James Gunn, had remembered that he voiced the Iron Giant, that he was able to play a character of very few words and do it effectively. Being able to change the inflection and kind of his voice has that gravitas. So that helped him get cast as Groot.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I only have one more fact, and it is some casting details. So there were several other people considered to voice the Iron Giant before Vin Diesel was, like set in stone, I guess you could say. They were Peter Cullen, Sean Connery, Frank Welker, and James Earl Jones.
Man, that's an A-list of other voice actors. I mean, Peter Cullen, the voice of Optimus Prime, probably my favorite voice actor, period. So, okay, let's go down the list. You said Peter Cullen, then Sean Connery, so one of the 007s, James Bond, then Frank
Welker,
who was the voice of Megatron in the Transformers series, and then what was the last one?
James Earl Jones.
I mean, Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And Mufasa.
And moving back to Frank Welker, he also voices Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, Frank Welker and Peter Cullen are like only voice actors. So they've voiced a multitude of characters. Peter Cullen is the one who created the original sound for the Predator.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that like clicking noise, that was him.
Huh.
And I mean, there's a multitude of other things, but yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all I've got for fun facts.
Okay, cool. Well, I have some production details. Somewhat limited, or I tried to kind of condense because animated film productions are significantly different than live action productions. And a lot of it just kind of revolves around, they chose to storyboard this piece and not this. And I don't really feel like that's super relative or helpful to what we're talking about. So kind of cherry picked some stuff here and there. But starting out in kind of a pre-production spot, the movie, The Iron Giant, was actually born out of tragedy. So as you mentioned before, it was originally written as a book titled The Iron Man by Ted Hughes, who wrote the book as a means to comfort his children after his wife / their mother had tragically committed suicide. This resonated with Brad Bird, who prior to the movie being made, he had experienced a family tragedy when his sister was shot and killed by her estranged husband. So two obviously world-shattering, devastating, heartbreaking tragedies that define both Ted and Brad's lives. So the deeper meaning behind the story of the Iron Man, the book, really hit home with Brad, and so he pitched the idea of adapting the source material into an animated film to Warner Brothers. And kind of the way he pitched it, which I did mention this in our episode on The Incredibles that we did last season. If you have not listened to it, go listen to it because it's actually very interesting. The production of The Incredibles and The Iron Giant are actually very, very closely intertwined. While Brad Bird was working on this movie, he actually The Iron Giant was the genesis of The Incredibles, and they are intertwined together in a very inseparable way. It's very interesting. So anyways, go listen to that episode. But the idea that he pitched this movie around was, he said, quote, "What if a gun had a soul, but it didn't want to be a gun?" Warner Brothers, they were moved by Brad's pitch, and they were sold on the idea. But unfortunately, they had recently experienced a box office bomb with their animated film called The Quest for Camelot. Because of this, they limited Brad Bird's animation team significantly, as well as his budget. Some of the higher-ups at Warner Brothers were reconsidering animation as a whole, and because of this kind of looming threat, it inevitably put the movie on an extremely tight production schedule because they were always worried that the rug was going to get pulled out from under them. So they started production on the film. They started animating. Brad got an entire team of animators behind him. They started storyboarding the movie, and eventually Brad decided that he was going to send his animators on a trip. So the film is set in a fictional town called Rockwell, which is supposed to be located near or in Maine. So during production, Brad sent his animators off to Maine so that they could research the area. He wanted the film to feel authentic, the film setting, that is. So he had them, the animators, visit a number of small towns in Maine, which Rockwell is supposed to be kind of this really small, local, rural town. So he had them visit a number of small towns in Maine, and he wanted them to sketch anything that they saw.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is, which I know this is a really common practice, or at least it used to be in traditional 2D animation. I would have to think it still is, but, I don't know, maybe not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, he had them just sketch whatever they saw, barns, shop fronts, stuff like that, and then bring it back into the studio so that they could kind of get inspiration. So on the note of animation, the movie was animated entirely in traditional 2D animation. So, all your old school Disney movies, that same type of animation here, except one part of the movie was not. And that was the biggest piece of the movie, the actual character of the Iron Giant. he was a CGI model as opposed to 2D animation. But the artist went in later and added lines to the Iron Giant to help it kind of match that 2D animation style.
Yeah, I had read that too. That is really interesting.
Yeah. And that's all I have on production details.
Okay. Well, since this is like one of your favorite childhood movies, I want to hear what you would rate this.
This one's a tough one for me. As I've thought about it from when we watched it to now, I feel like I've kind of been all over the scale.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to overanalyze how I want to score this, and I'm just going to give it a nice round 95.
Okay.
I feel like the movie definitely warrants that score. I would almost argue that it warrants a higher score.
It is very good.
Especially just because the themes in this movie are so strong.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like that's what is the best part of this film, is just how much heart this movie has,
Mm-hmm.
that the message of this movie is extremely good, extremely strong, extremely powerful. Again, I know I've talked about this in other movies, but I think the concept of talking up to children instead of talking down to them is incredibly important. And this is definitely one of those movies.
Mm-hmm.
It encourages children and adults too. I mean, this is for anybody. This is an important message in this movie. But just, I mean, there are some really deep concepts that are translated in a way that's understandable for anybody. And a lot of that is kind of due to the premise of Hogarth being a child trying to communicate, like, what is a soul
Mm-hmm.
to a robot who is kind of infantile in nature.
Right.
So, I mean, it's really, really deep, but they do it in a way that's like that anybody can grasp, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. This is such a good film, and I will always love this movie, but rather than kind of going back and forth and whatnot, I'm just going to be content, give it a solid 95.
Okay. I think I'm going to give it I was thinking earlier about this. I was kind of going back and forth too, but I think I'm going to settle on a 93.
Okay.
I agree. It's a great message and it makes you feel a lot of different things. Like, it's got some really funny parts and it's also got some really sincere parts, and the ending makes you cry. And
Yep.
so it's just very well done, I think. So
I agree. That's one thing that honestly I wasn't even thinking about, but you're right. I mean, the movie is genuinely funny, which I think that's something that Brad Bird is able to do well in his movies. I mean, Ratatouille, The Incredibles, The Iron Giant, those are all Brad Bird movies.
yeah.
And all of those are like home runs. Every single one of those movies are phenomenal. But that is kind of like a similar theme in every single one of those, that they're really, really strong message, very intellectual in nature as far as big concepts and talking up to people, children. But they're also, I mean, layered with not like stupid humor,
Right.
genuinely clever, funny, good humor. And I can definitely appreciate that. So I'm glad you pointed that out, because that wasn't something I was really thinking about.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask what your thoughts were about this, because I've only seen this movie twice. And like, I didn't even know it was a movie until you and I started dating.
Yes.
So the first time I watched it was probably, gosh, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, maybe more than that.
And then obviously I just watched it the other day, just in preparation for this.
Right.
So when I was watching it most recently, it really had a lot of scenes that reminded me of Big Hero 6.
Okay.
And I wondered if you thought, do you feel like maybe Big Hero 6 pulled some inspiration from the Iron Giant?
You know, now that you mention it, I can totally see that. and it's definitely possible. Especially like for those of you who don't know, Big Hero 6 was originally a Marvel comic that got adapted into a Disney movie, and they changed the source material pretty significantly, and it was okay. I mean, it wasn't even marketed as a Marvel movie, not even like a legacy, just animated, this isn't a part of the MCU type Marvel property. It was solely animated as a Disney movie. Kind of giving people the impression that it was, an original intellectual property for them, which it absolutely is not. That being said, the fact that they changed so much of the source material, it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. But, the thought had never really crossed my mind until literally just now when you said it.
Yeah, the only reason I say it is just because, so in Big Hero 6, for those of you who might not have seen it or haven't seen it in a while, it's about a robot named Baymax, and he's a super friendly robot, and he's designed to help people. But when I can't remember, it's been a while since I've seen that movie too, but there's a time when he kind of, how when the Iron Giant, his eyes turn red when he wants to protect what's his name? Hogarth. And
when he sees a gun.
Yeah. Sorry, so not protect Hogarth, but yeah, when he sees a gun. And then I drew that to Baymax when I think Hero tells him to kill a bad guy in the movie, and so his eyes turn red and he starts trying to kill him. But then also the one that reminded me more of Big Hero 6 was just like Baymax, he sacrificed himself to save the world. Right. The Iron Giant sacrificed himself to save the world. And then at the end, it ends with a sense of hope, because the Iron Giant, you can see all of his pieces inching back to be put back together. And then Baymax, Hero has the little card that I don't know what the right word is,
the chip,
that helped create him,
right?
And so when Hero saw that, it's there's a sense of hope, he can put him back together, if that makes sense. So I just thought there were a lot of connections, so I wondered if maybe they based that movie on the Iron Giant.
Yeah, it's totally possible. I mean, again, they changed the source material very heavily for that movie as opposed to the original story. So it's very possible that they drew from this movie. I think that would be a great question for Brad Bird, how he feels about it, because he might feel the exact same way. And, those are all really great points. Not something I had given any thought until just now. But
yeah. I might never know. Maybe I can look it up and see if I can find any answers later. Yeah.
Well, do you have any favorite scenes or I guess any criticisms or anything you want to talk about the movie? Anything that sticks out to you?
I guess one of them is one that I just talked about. I like the ending where you see all of his pieces inching back toward each other.
Right.
And I also like that Hogarth was clued into that, because he had the screw that went into the Iron Giant's head. And so he immediately knew what was going on when he saw it starting to move and that kind of thing. Yeah. So I really liked that, because it's just it's gut wrenching when you see, or when you put together okay, he's going to die, right? So I really liked that. I also really loved the character of Dean.
Yes.
I love the relationship that he has with Hogarth from the very beginning, like even when they don't even know each other and Hogarth is just in the diner and trying to keep a squirrel as a pet.
Right.
I don't know, I like the dynamic between them. I like that Dean ended up with Hogarth's mom at the end, and
Played by Jennifer Aniston.
yes,
Which
played by
is so
Jennifer
random,
Aniston.
honestly.
Yeah, really. Does she do any other voice acting?
I have no idea.
I had never thought that she even did it in the first place. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to think. There were just so many scenes that I really liked. Let me hear some of yours because I liked a lot.
Yeah. I agree with you. I do really like the character of Dean. I think he's written really well. Mm-hmm. I think that his relationship with Hogarth is written really well. Just somebody who's, he doesn't feel like maybe a stereotypical character that fits into a box.
Right.
Like he's obviously like they're trying to check the box of like a cool guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that's only one part of his character that, he's kind of this cool guy who's not traditional. He rides a motorcycle, has a soul patch, and that's it. But that's actually not it. Like that's just scratching the surface, and that his probably a lot of it is credited to his voice actor and just how he decided to show emotion through the character. But yeah, all his parts with Hogarth are great. I think he's really funny, and it seems very sincere.
Yeah.
Whether, he's yelling at him for eating the art or the Iron Giant for eating the art or anything else, he just feels very authentic as a character. Mm-hmm. But yeah, start to finish, I pretty much like this whole movie. There's not a whole lot that I have as far as dislikes. I will say, there was one time that I kind of felt like when we watched it this most recent time, that there was maybe a little bit of a pacing issue, not like bad, but just like, okay, this maybe could have been reworked slightly, but I never felt like it was a burden. And I don't even know if it's worth talking about, but it's just, I remember feeling that way when I watched it this most recent time, I guess.
Do you have an example of you felt like?
I don't, and that's kind of why, I just remember thinking it. I probably should have wrote something down just as an example, but, the film is so strong as a whole that I feel like it kind of overshadows anything that's like that.
Yeah, and that's okay. I was just curious if you had one, but I did have a couple lighthearted scenes that I did like too that I wanted to mention.
Okay.
I just thought of. One of them was, sorry, unless you were still talking.
No, go ahead.
Okay. One of them was when the military all comes to the junkyard.
Yes.
And Dean greets them and is like, oh, you came just in time. There was someone who really wanted this as a centerpiece in their lobby or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then he opens the door and the Iron Giant is just sitting there completely still, posing as a metal sculpture that Dean had made. So I really liked that scene. And then I also, the scene when Hogarth is swimming in the lake and he's trying to get Dean to come in, and then he's trying to get the Iron Giant to come in, and the Iron Giant ends up doing a huge cannonball and completely basically drains the lake because it just splashes everywhere. That's a funny one too.
Yes.
And I like when because Dean was sitting in a chair by it, and when all the water's splashing out, he's thrown into the middle of the road and he's still in his chair. And I like when the truck driver comes through and is like, "You're in the middle of the road," and what does he say?
Dean, he just says, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
He doesn't even look at the guy. He just
Yes.
says, "Yeah."
Yeah, that's so funny.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I mean, there's so much that I like about this film. I love just kind of the friendship that Hogarth and the Iron Giant have, especially, I know I touched on this earlier, but just the idea that, like, he's infantile, like, he doesn't know anything. And whether that's due to, like, you know, he kind of has that dent in his head that once it pops back out towards the end of the film, he goes into like full attack mode. You know, maybe it's due to that. Maybe he's young, you know, like we don't know. We don't know anything about the Iron Giant or his origins, which was actually intentional. Brad Bird did not want to include really any part about the Iron Giant's origins because he wanted to focus more on the story of the relationship between Hogarth and the Iron Giant and kind of the ultimate theme / message of the movie, which I can appreciate. But you know, there's so much that's cool about this movie. I guess carrying on with the idea or theme of Hogarth and the Iron Giant's relationship, I really love when I think it might be their first night at the junkyard. But when Hogarth has all the different comic books and he doesn't say anything. He doesn't say the name. He doesn't point to it. It's just kind of sitting there and the Iron Giant notices it. And it's the Atomo comic.
Yeah.
Where you know, it on the cover of that comic book, it has this giant robot that's named Atomo and he's like destroying a city and he's like clearly the bad guy in that comic.
Right.
And the Iron Giant notices it. I don't think he even says anything. And he's just very sad. And then Hogarth recognizes it and puts 2 and 2 together and starts talking to him about it and says, you know, you aren't who anybody says you are, so to speak. I don't remember exactly what he says, but he basically drives home the idea that you have a choice to be who you want to be. And just because, you know, you were made for this purpose doesn't mean that you have to be that.
Right.
Which is a really important thing, you know, that he's, and that, I mean, really is the through line of the whole film. You're not a weapon.
Right.
And that's what the Iron Giant says at the end of the film, you know, I'm not a gun. He says that to Hogarth, which is just, it's so powerful. And I love that shortly after he notices the Atomo cover, that Hogarth takes the time to encourage him and tell him, no, this is who you can be. You can choose to be this person. And he talks about Superman and just, you know, that he has all these incredible powers, but he only uses it for good, that he doesn't hurt anybody. He doesn't hurt people. He uses his powers for good. And you can see just like the Iron Giant's eyes kind of light up and Superman. And it's just, I don't know. This movie is probably another movie that I would put on the list of a quote unquote masterclass in showing and not telling.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you said what? Vin Diesel, who plays the Iron Giant, has what, 53 lines in this movie? Or 53 words, not lines. You said
53 words, yes.
Yeah, not lines, words. That's all that he says in this movie, and yet he's the main character of the film. I mean, I guess I should say he's the title character of the film. You could argue that Hogarth is the main character, and really it's both of them. But even still, I mean, everything about the Iron Giant is conveyed through emotion or action. It's very rarely, very seldom actual words. He's not just, you know, word vomiting everything that he's doing, not dumping that onto the audience, which is done extremely well in this film. And I mean, as far as just continuing on with things that I like or things that were done well in this movie, I love the scene where the Iron Giant connects with the deer and he just
Yeah.
puts his finger out and touches it, and the deer isn't scared or anything. It just lets him touch it, and then it just slowly kind of runs off, and then the deer is shot by hunters, and the Iron Giant Hogarth has to try to explain to the Iron Giant what death is. You know, the really, really hard concept for a limited mind, I guess you could say, like the Iron Giant, to be able to kind of grasp. And he has to deal with that and understand that, you know, it happens. And I do like what Hogarth tells him there, and it reinforces and builds this main idea, at least for this story, that it's okay to die.
Right.
It's not a bad thing to die, but it's a bad thing to kill. Just, you know, really reinforcing for the Iron Giant that he cannot kill people. But it's okay if you die. Yeah, that's not necessarily bad. And you see, like, that whole scene is, I guess, expanded upon or foreshadowing or played out, whatever you want to say, basically for the entire end sequence of the movie.
Yeah.
Is just that the culmination of that scene with the deer. Because you have the Iron Giant, who is being attacked by the military. And I mean, let's just take a moment to say, Kent, he's the redhead, the agent from the government, right? That's causing all of Hogarth's issues.
Yeah.
That guy is an absolute coward. You know, that his character is just absolutely terrible. And it's really not that bad until the end of the movie, where he realizes that he's been outsmarted, scorned, you know, whatever, by a kid. And so he takes it personally and decides, yeah, we need to drop a nuke on the Iron Giant and destroy him. And, oh, yeah, everybody here. To the point where his superior officer, I think he's just called the general, I don't know, will not call in the order to send the nuke, because everybody sees that the Iron Giant is actually, hey, he's not bad. They got it wrong initially, and they jumped the gun, but they stopped. They recognized their mistake. But then Kent grabs the radio and says, you know, send the missile now, or whatever. So then at that point, you know, you're in this pickle, so to speak, because everybody's going to die. And the Iron Giant sets Hogarth down, and he touches him, just like he touched the deer. He just reaches out and touches him. And then the Iron Giant goes out, he flies away, and I don't remember if he said it here or if when he's by himself or he said it to Hogarth, but I know he took a moment kind of in sequence to say, I am not a weapon. And then he flies off, he grabs the missile, sacrifices himself, and saves everybody. You know, again, reinforcing the idea that, hey, it's okay to die.
Right.
And he's being Superman. You know, you're seeing that play out. He's saving the day. And it's not okay to kill, which he kind of lost control there for a little bit when he's being attacked. So he stopped. And I mean, it's just I feel like the end of this movie is the perfect bow on the entire story.
Yes.
And that's probably, honestly, the strongest part of this film, is that it's so solid and coherent on all of those things. And part of that, I feel like, is due to the fact that it's a shorter movie. I don't remember what the runtime is, but I believe
it's 2 hours.
Is it? Okay, I was going to say, I believe it's 2 hours or less, which helps kind of condense and make you say, hey, we have to convey this, this, and this. And I feel like they do a really good job.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Sorry, I know I went on kind of, I don't know if it was like a 10-minute rant there, but are there other scenes you'd like to touch on, things that stick out to you?
No, I think I'm good. I think you summed it up well.
Okay. Well, thank you. Side note, I think the scene where Hogarth is quote unquote showing Kent around town, and he actually had no interest in doing that, and he ends up getting him ice cream and putting laxative chocolate in his ice cream. That is hilarious, especially because like if you were a kid and you didn't know how to read, but you were watching the movie, or you didn't know what a laxative was, like you
can put it together pretty fast. I think,
you can put it together that like he's having bathroom issues, but you didn't know that Hogarth necessarily is the one who caused it. And I think that's really funny. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's really all I have for this. I think just to sum this movie up, like I really appreciate the message here. I feel like going back to kind of early in this episode when I said that Brad pitched this movie on the idea of what if a gun had a soul, but it didn't want to be a gun. I feel you can really see that play out during this movie. The Iron Giant, after he understands the concept of having a soul and everything, and he realizes that he is a weapon, that's what he was made for, but that he doesn't have to be that he can choose to overcome the cards he was dealt, so to speak. I think that's just such a cool idea, such a cool theme to communicate, and an important message and story to present to your audience, because we all battle that in our lives. And you know, just because things have been a certain way doesn't mean that that's all it's ever going to be, and that we do have a choice, and we have the ability to choose who we're going to be, I guess, so to speak. Yeah. Well, cool. That's all I have. Do you have anything else?
Nope.
Okay.
I think I'm good.
All right. Well, that sums up this week's episode. Thank you guys for joining us. I had a lot of fun covering this episode, mostly because this movie is just so dear to my heart. But I'm really excited for next week's episode. We're going to be moving away from, I know last week we did a comedy. This week we're doing an animated film. We're going back to live action movies next week. And I don't even know, I guess you could call it a thriller. I don't know how.
It's a drama. Heist movie.
There you go. That's exactly what it is. It's a heist movie. I think this is actually our first heist movie.
I love heist movies.
They're very good. Next week, we're going to be covering Ocean's 11, which is just, I mean, it's a fun movie. Star-studded cast, Matt Damon, Brad Pitt, George Clooney. That's only 3 names, and there's a bunch of names. I'm really excited to do it. The Ocean's movies are both funny, clever, well thought out, and I'm excited to cover it. So if you want to watch that movie ahead of time, it is currently streaming on Peacock, so you can watch it there. And we hope you guys enjoyed listening to this episode. If you liked what you heard, I'm just going to ask you for a 5-star rating on Spotify. It really does go a long way for us. I know I ask that pretty much every episode. But we would just appreciate it if you take the time, if you're listening on Spotify, if you take the time to do that for us. And with that, I hope you guys have a great week.
See you next time.
Bye. Love you.